Friday football recap. I'm joined by Adam Paul of EC Preps. And, well, Adam, it was a pretty good night, I'd say, overall for the East County. A couple of surprises that maybe didn't go our way, but a couple of big surprises. Those teams are going to say, you know what? They weren't a surprise to us. We felt good going in. And after seeing the way they performed, I don't doubt that they felt like they had a chance to win some big games. We'll talk about all the East County matchups in just a moment, but what were your overall takeaways from opening night, my brother?
Craziness. Talking to, some of our conglomerates, our media conglomerates, outside of East County, just pure madness. And, there were a lot of eyebrow raising results. Some blowouts, some low scoring games. I think it was a combination of a lot of things. First week, a lot of teams trying to figure out what do they have and what not. Just overall, it was very entertaining and exciting. It just goes to show. I hope it sets the tone for the rest of the season here in San Diego.
Well, let's start off with I'm just going to say it. It's the big story of the week. With all apologies to a couple of teams coming up in just a moment, I think they're willing to get on board with us on this one. El Cajon Valley went to Francis Parker, and when you saw the scores coming across early on and you saw the Braves were in a competitive game, keeping the score very close, very low, that they had a chance, and then when you saw they had the lead, how about it, Adam? El Cajon Valley 13, Francis Parker 7. Nick Osborne and his troop won for the first time in 18 games, unless you count that forfeit win last year. But I'm talking about on the field. Demarius Hyde, 17 carries, 130 yards, and that 60-yard TD. And Clarence Johnson, those are my guys. Then they came up with big plays again. Johnson, 115 yards, and man, Mario Jacobs, he's the heart and soul of that team. But what a night for the Braves, an emotional night for the Braves, and I can't help get emotional for the Braves.
Yeah, no, at first I thought it said halftime, and I'm like, wow. And kind of had to go take a double take and go back and refresh the old cell phone just to make sure that the Twitter that it wasn't a misprint. Just because like you said, they hadn't won in 18 games unless you count the forfeit. But so in reality, 18 games. No, kudos to Coach Osborne. I think he's changing the culture over there, not just on the football field, but off the football field with his what do they call it? Futsal. I think it's called. The indoor soccer deal that he does at lunch. I heard their numbers are up a little bit there at El Cajon. It's always going to be a numbers game there. Anyway, as you know, Moni. So yeah, 13-7, they held on because in years past when they've led at halftime, because we've always seen them, seen the Braves the last 5-6 years, they'll lead a team at half, or they'll have a pretty good lead going into the second half, and then an injury will happen or something else will happen, a bounce there, a bounce here. Will go against them, and they'll end up losing the game, and it will end up either close or it ends up getting away from them. It's just unfortunate that's the history. But last night, 13-7.
Great job by the Braves, and we're going to keep an eye on it because, you know what? After seeing that performance, and we kind of teased in the beginning of the season over on East County Sports that, the Braves could be in line for a couple of victories this year, given basically their kind of their returning crew and their overall enthusiasm, and what a start they got off to on Friday night.
Yeah, when I was previewing the leagues with Braden Sopran on 97.3 FM, The Fan, I didn't pick that game for them to win. There was a couple other, we looked at all the games on the schedules for each, respective team. And there was a couple of games that I thought the Braves, had a chance to win if things went their way, as we talked about. But hey, Francis Parker, interestingly enough, Francis Parker actually had their opportunities to actually win the game. I didn't see any of this mentioned, but they actually had the ball under a minute in Braves territory on about the 4 or 5 yard line, and penalties unfortunately hurt them and pushed the ball back further, and they couldn't capitalize. So, and along with some other things, they missed a bad snap on a field goal attempt early on in the game. They ran the ball for the majority of the time, and El Cajon Valley kind of defended that very well. The court, Francis Parker, they graduated a lot of guys, including their quarterback. So they have a new quarterback who doesn't quite, have, trust in his arm. But from my understanding, he's going to be a pretty decent quarterback once he gets his bearings going. Excuse me. Their main, I guess their main running back, Campo Seco, he hurt his leg just before the half. So in the second half, he only played defense. So, we talked about Braves getting, injuries and the breaks going against them. Sounds like the breaks kind of went against the Lancers last night. Also, the Braves killed them on the run game, because they bounced outside, and, Francis Parker's defense made up of a lot of freshmen. Didn't know how to defend that. Looking at other stats, I saw online, El Cajon Valley didn't complete a pass. In fact, what I read was they were 0 for 7. So
that's something to be concerned with, I would think.
Not
going to worry about it tonight, though.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. With Francis Parker's freshman corners, and a first year varsity outside linebacker, so they got burned quite a bit on that halfback dive that El Cajon is very well known for. But kudos to El Cajon. They took advantage of Francis Parker's weaknesses and pulled out the victory. And like I said, you and I have talked about in the past, this is normal. A close game like this usually doesn't go the way of the Braves, but last night it did.
One other name I'm going to throw out there is Tiger Kuhn. He had an interception for the Braves in that one, and hey, the Braves did outgain Francis Parker. So great job by the Braves. Let's move on. Adam, last year, the El Cajon Valley Braves and the Valhalla Norsemen combined to go 0-20. Right now, the El Cajon Valley Braves and the Valhalla Norsemen are a combined 2-0. And did any team in the county look as impressive as Valhalla? Now, given their opponent, University City, supposed to come in with a pretty good-looking offense with Gunnar Gray and Skip Walltower, but man, Valhalla, Keegan Baker, 21 carries, 270 yards, 5 touchdowns. Valhalla snapped their own 18-game losing streak. And, man, I love that interview that Don DeMars had with Coach Mike Caston. Felt so good for his players. It brushed all the accolades aside and heaped the praise on his crew. What a job. Ray Sanchez carried the ball well, and Luke Pillsbury managed the offense. And one of the biggest wins for Valhalla, obviously. They had won almost in 2 years themselves. Gray did look good. They passed for over 250 yards in the game. And Walltower, despite being shaken up with looked like an apparent leg injury in the first half, he battled through and had 14 receptions, including 3 touchdowns. But Keegan Baker running behind that big offensive line of Alan Kalasho, and the Norsemen, 4 juniors on that offensive line. So Baker he's a senior, but he's running behind a offensive line that's going to gain a lot of experience as well going forward.
Yeah, excuse me, as you and I were at the Steele Canyon game last night, I was getting, I'm sure you noticed, but I was getting tagged and stuff by our good friend Don DeMars out there at Valhalla, and just seeing the scoring updates, I was like, whoa, because if you remember last year, University City hammered Valhalla by good 30 points, if I recall. No, Valhalla, everybody expected Gunnar Gray, his big arm to take over, and he had his yardage, but Valhalla didn't break. They did enough to stop the Centurions, and in front of their home crowd. They had a good crowd last night out there in El Cajon to cheer on the Norsemen. 34 points is their highest scoring output in about 3 years. So that's a plus. Coach Caston, again, like Coach Osborne out of El Cajon, out of El Cajon Valley, is building up that culture. He's changing things. The numbers are up this year. Have fun, basically. Baker, he's going to get his numbers. Pillsbury, 4 of 6 for 55 yards, so he wasn't asked, to throw the ball much, and that's all right. What killed at University City was the fact that they couldn't tackle. Keegan Baker, he's a big guy. He bumbled and rumbled and stumbled his way up the middle, and University City just could not bring him down. So yeah, he had 5 touchdowns, like you said, 270 plus yards. I know that definitely the 2 touchdown score definitely opened up some eyes across the county, talking to our fellow media conglomerates.
I couldn't help but to also notice how impressive Baker's breakaway speed was as well when he got into the open on 2 long gainers. So a great job by the Norsemen, and hats off to them. They deserve that one. And hey, University City was supposed to come in there, and I think they were expected to win. So I'm calling it an upset. But
absolutely.
Valhalla, everything was different about Valhalla last night, from the feeling in the stadium to the crowd enthusiasm to the players rallying around their teammates when they were getting scores and increasing their lead. So it was just a different feeling out there for Valhalla. The winning is not over right now.
Right.
When it comes to the Valhalla Norsemen. All of a sudden, this non-league schedule is very, very important to Valhalla.
Yeah, because when University City would score and Valhalla answered, University City, I think, pulled within a touchdown at one point, if I remember correctly. And in the past, that was a bad sign for the Norsemen. But you know what? They didn't wilt under that pressure. And Baker just said, you know what? Get on my back. I'm taking you with me. And, he did his thing. Like you said, he broke through that Centurion defense. And, he kind of, as you remember, he busted on the scene last year, and had, a pretty good year for, a team that didn't win any games. So this is a confidence booster for the Norsemen. And it just goes to show that, I don't think they're going to win league, obviously. I mean, we're not always expecting that, but I think they'll be competitive. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Adam, we're going to talk about the high-profile teams in just a moment, but I want to kind of continue to roll through some of these teams that maybe these guys were expected to win these games, but I think the manner in which they did kind of warrants them. Maybe you and I talking about them before we get to those ranked teams that we have that did the job on Friday night. How about the Granite Hills Eagles? Justice McComb, 250 yards passing and a touchdown. James Johnson continued to look impressive. 9 catches, including a touchdown. And Richard Junie Harris, a pair of touchdowns. A very, very good night in what was expected to be a tough, close ball game at Poway. Granite Hills gets the job done. Butler scored first. Poway was on top, but Granite Hills eventually wore them down.
Despite having a lot of veterans on the team for Granite, with James Johnson and Junie Harris and whatnot, and Ethan Bishop on the defense.
Setterberg had some big plays.
Yeah, you can almost call this an upset, just because as Braden, and I think you and I have probably talked about this in the past, but I know definitely Braden Soprano and I have talked about it on not just for football, but during the softball podcast and whatnot. But traveling, Granite, having to take a bus ride on the very first game to Poway. It's not a short bus ride either from El Cajon up to Poway. You're taking kids who've probably never been on varsity football before. You're getting them into a routine, from dressing in a unfamiliar locker room to a unfamiliar setting and territory, obviously. And then Justice McComb not having any varsity experience. I know that was the big question mark from listening to John Maffey on another podcast. He talked about the travel time as well. So yeah, Granite Hills going up to Poway and basically punching them, and showing them basically deja vu, because remember last year Granite Hills won another close game at Granite last year. So
yeah, let's not sell Poway short on this. They actually came back and took the lead in the fourth quarter. About midway through the fourth quarter, Butler scored another touchdown, but Granite Hills then went down and scored the decisive touchdown in the final minute plus of the game. McComb eventually got a 5-yard rushing touchdown for the decisive score. So a clutch drive by the Eagles to get that win. We'll have some more information on that game in the days to come.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Monte. Just going back to that game, Kellen Cobb, Coach Cobb's, his 8th year, and he's got a veteran varsity coaching staff. So you talk to him, in your little league preview and camp preview and whatnot. Obviously, you want it's hard to prepare, like you and I have talked about. You're just going up against yourselves, other than say a scrimmage or whatever else, the 7-on-7 during the summer. Other than that, you're just going up against yourself. And I really think Kellen and his staff did a really excellent job of preparing the Eagles for that matchup up at Poway.
Well, here's another impressive performance, and I'm glad that the Grossmont Foothillers, Mira Mesa certainly had lost some players from last year, and there was a little bit of question maybe surrounding how they'd do this year, but still, they're Mira Mesa. They had a great season last year. Grossmont coming off their rare subpar season, and Grossmont really a great job. Not only did Odom look good, but everyone around him looked good, and that just made everybody on the Foothillers look good. How about Jamie with nearly 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. They also did it on the ground. Tucker, not only did he have 77 yards on the ground, but he also had 4 catches, and he also had that big 50-yard touchdown reception, and the big play also to Sean Williams for Grossmont. A real good night, a great way for Grossmont to start the season with a big win over Mira Mesa. Elijah Thomas did have 150 yards rushing, but he carried 33 times. So I thought the defense for Grossmont also did very well.
Yeah, that game was close. If you saw the score on social media on Twitter, it was tied at halftime, and all of a sudden, Grossmont comes out in the second half, and looked like Coach Carlo made some adjustments, and they went from there and just kind of put the game away from there. Grossmont, they racked up 466 total yards of offense. Mira Mesa, obviously missing, you're losing an athlete like Noah Tumblin, and not having a quarterback who, from what I've read, reading and talking to people, not having any varsity experience. In fact, he never played organized football before. He was a baseball player. So he was obviously an athlete. And like you said, Elijah Thomas ran for 150 yards for them, but sounded like for the most part, the defense of the Foothillers bottled up that offense. But you know what? They're Mira Mesa, coached by Chris Thompson. He's been around a long time, with Helix, when he coached the Helix, also Bonita Vista. So it's a good win for the Foothillers. And I think, Mira Mesa, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, some of the defense for Grossmont: Chris Alba, 9 tackles, Austin Whitmire, 8 tackles and a pass breakup, and Jaden Jones, 5 tackles, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. Matt Diaz had an interception for Grossmont. So I will tell you that they really bottled up Thomas in the second half and did the job on him and limited their possessions. And that's how Grossmont kind of was able to take over and get that win. Great job by the Hillers to start the season.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the number 3 Helix Highlanders. It took a while for Helix to kind of wear down Cajon, and there were moments where I think that Cajon might think that they were going to get out of La Mesa with a victory. I mean, this one really came down to the wire. Alelion Noah, 30 carries, 172 yards, and 2 TDs. He had the big 65-yard touchdown catch and run, if you will, and Jeremiah Fletcher came up big on the last 2 series. He had a sack and a fumble recovery and then an interception in the final minute. But Adam, the Highlanders get it done, but you have some big news.
Well, before we get to that, don't forget Jeremiah Fletcher also had 15 tackles as well.
Great game for Jeremiah.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, Monty, go ahead, finish up.
No, but you have some breaking news coming up this week for the Highlanders game.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're who are they? They're playing a team from Utah. Do you know that team's name?
Harriman. They've played them before.
Yeah, Harriman. They played them last year, right? Was it last year?
They have played Harriman before. It might not have been last year.
Okay. Well, so if you're going out to Helix on Friday night, you're going to be in for a treat. Elion Noah, he with his 172 yards on the ground the other night against Cajon, he's only 8 yards short of tying the great Reggie Bush for the all-time career rushing yardage leader in Helix High School history. According to the CIF. Excuse me, Reggie Bush had 4,975 yards for his career, and Noah, obviously minus 8 yards on that, so he needs 9. So he's gonna obviously pass that probably on his first carry. So when he does that, kudos to Elion Noah, the kid. He's an amazing ball player. So you might want to get out there early, check that out. That's going to be an awesome thing to see when he breaks such a prestigious record. As you know, Reggie Bush, that was back in 2000, the early 2000s. So it's been a long time.
Yeah, so you look at Noah's career statistics. A 4-year varsity player. He ran for a couple hundred yards as a freshman, even if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So that
yes.
certainly has helped his total as well. This kind of it snuck up on me. I know that, you and I had talked about players approaching records this year. And while Noah was on our radar, this one came up kind of quickly. Now, Helix has not been the best when it comes to reporting their team statistical information.
Right.
But they've gone ahead and compiled now their stats dating back, and they're showing Noah currently with that yardage total that you mentioned. Now, Noah did miss some games over the past 2 years, and those are reflected in those stats that he didn't play in a couple of games. I believe in both his sophomore and junior years, he had missed a game or two with various ailments.
Yeah, because he didn't play in that Cajon game last year, that game that they got blown out due to an injury. And also, if you recall, just like Jamon McClendon for Monte Vista last year, the Highlanders were blowing out opponents. And so, Coach Owens would take out the starters. So there was quarters or even whole halves where he didn't play. So to put up the numbers that he's done with probably either missing games from whether it be from injury or being pulled out of games due to just blowing out opponents, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back and do some of my own research on that. I'm not doubting the Highlanders at all. I just know that if I had someone who was about to break the records of Reggie Bush, I'd make sure I had all those numbers correct, because that is a huge accomplishment, and really a great guy.
And it's not just records. And it's not just Reggie Bush that he's circling the wagons around. It's also the all-time, Lawrence Walker, and also the all-time rushing record for East County set by Jamon McClendon, who happens to be 4th all-time in San Diego section history. Noah needed like 2,000-something yards, 2,000-something hundred yards to break Royce Freeman's record of the all-time rushing record for San Diego section history. So it's one of those things that, like you said, we can go back and look at numbers just to make sure, because we want to be as accurate as possible. Because like you said, Helix hasn't always been the greatest at reporting stats, whether it be online or whatnot. Even going back to the days of our good friend Bill Dickens and mentor. So yeah, this is something that we would definitely want to make sure is correct, is like you said. We're not saying they're wrong, but you and I are thorough about this stuff. So
right. I mean, if it's not exactly that, I mean, we've seen him put up huge games. I mean, it can't be too far off, but certainly we trust the Highlanders and their research. They obviously went to town on this one and made sure that they researched all this quickly. But it is interesting that that their numbers have come to the forefront now, when I personally have had trouble for several years getting statistical data from the Highlanders, and I try to set up some type of correspondence, through whoever's doing it, or my partners, whoever's getting the stats, and just try to, add it to with what we've been following. So it's great to have that information. Thank you, Helix, for going and doing that legwork.
Well, nobody was. I don't even know if it was them. I mean, I think they just entered the stats because they had kind of messaged me. not too long ago, because I said, wait a minute, the CIF record book is not completely updated, as you know. It's only as good as how when people send in information. Because if you look at it, there's Royce Freeman's not even in the book, but that's no fault of CIF. That's just from coaches or whoever not sending in information, and also having to verify stuff as well.
Right, and there's been no update this year to the book just yet, but no, they're kind of getting it together, and I imagine with the way the technology is unfolding and we're all getting older, that we're gonna do something about it real soon. Maybe with some of our friends over there at the UT, and kind of get all this together.
Yeah.
Before they put us out to pasture, Adam.
I hope that's a long while there, Moni.
You can't keep. I don't think you can keep stats on Instagram.
No.
All right.
You and I, we're just a pair of old dinosaurs with pads and pencils and paper.
I even think when I go on there and I hold my phone now because it's like, still got my notes on it. Okay, well we gave the Highlanders their due. Let's talk about another ranked team.
Sure.
We're out there to see Steele Canyon. They did a great job against Eastlake in a tightly contested battle that Eastlake actually scored the first touchdown of the game.
Yeah.
In that game, and put a little scare, I think, into Steele Canyon. And Steele Canyon got big plays from their big play guys to a certain extent, but Adam, the Cougars only finished with 99 total yards in the game. That is a major concern, no matter how good Eastlake typical defense is going to be, because Steele Canyon has a lot of weapons. Now, you might say, well, maybe their passing game isn't getting going because they don't have the same type of quarterback. And I will say that Jeremy Mendez-Gall in the game was just 8 for 21. But the one drive that he did engineer that was kind of a passing-oriented scoring drive, he looked very, very sharp and completed several passes on that drive. His receivers ran nice routes, and he threw very accurate passes, kind of leading his receivers. I thought the pass to Antoine Walker in the corner of the end zone was a great touch pass by him. And the Cougars get the job done 17-6 with a ton of defense.
Oh, yeah. No, like you said, Jeremy Mendez-Gall, there was a couple of, as you saw, because you being there, on the one drive where they were up, I think it was the drive where they ended up kicking that last field goal to go up 17-6. They could have scored a touchdown, if you recall. The guy dropped the ball. It was like he had open. There was nobody with him in the end zone, and he just dropped it. Ruben Pena, Ruben and I from SDFNL looked at each other and were like, "Oh, you man!" And then the second time, right after that, he threw it to the other side. The guy had the receiver had the Eastlake defender beat. Again, dropped it. So it's just one of those things, I think that, talking to Coach Longerbone after the game, they're going to something to work on. Defensively, that's, they continue what they did last year. They were quick. That I was like, wow. Because Eastlake only had 2 big plays. Other than that, they didn't have any offense.
Yeah, great job by the Cougars, but all of their stats came on the defensive end, didn't
yes.
it? First of all, Williamu Morse, I think they're calling him Rugby. I saw in the paper, and I asked Jim Lindgren, I said, Rugby? So how'd they get that nickname? Well, I guess he plays a little rugby, and they can't pronounce Williamu Ahu, so they just call him Rugby Morse. But he had 3 sacks and forced a fumble. We're going to ask if we can call him Rugby because it's too hard to spell out his name, I guess. Junior Akintunde recovered 2 fumbles, and Chance Johnson had an interception and several pass breakups for the Cougars in general. So a great night for the Cougars. Most of the work was done by the defense, and I don't think that's a surprise, but we also can mention that they did have the big kick return by Chris Carter that set up a 12-yard touchdown run by Wes Neely. So they were able to use their skill players a little bit. Really, if I'm a team, I'm never kicking the ball to any of those Steele Canyon return men. I'm aiming it out of bounds, and on kickoffs, I might just take my chances and let them start with a short field.
Well, if you noticed the Eastlake punter, every time they punted, the guy never kicked to the return guy for Steele Canyon. And if you noticed also, he badly punted a couple of them because of that. They went like straight out of bounds. So because of that, Steele Canyon had excellent field position.
Well, one thing to note of Eastlake's 14 offensive series, 12 of them lasted 3 plays or fewer, so 3 and out on 12 of 14 offensive series.
Yeah.
The Tigers did have a couple of big plays, but the Cougars nullified them with big plays of their own.
Yeah, like I said, despite having excellent field position for the majority of the night, the Cougars just they couldn't take advantage of that. And I think, obviously with it being the first game, so they got time to work on it. Even Coach Longerbone, he talked about that after the game to Jim Lindgren and also myself in the little post game interview. And he said, we got some stuff to clean up. We, luckily we got the win, and it's a good win. Shows, hey, we're Steele Canyon, because they came into the contest number 10 in the preseason Union Tribune poll. And also, the computers had Eastlake, I believe, ranked number 12, was what I saw and what you and I talked about as well. So it was a battle for playoff positioning, because I think both teams are going to do very well in their respective leagues as well. Because Eastlake, from what I have gathered and from talking to like Luke Ramirez and others, they're the team to beat down in that down that South Bay Metro Mesa League, I believe that they're in. And then with the conversation that myself and Braden had the other night, on 97.3 FM, The Fan, we think it's going to come down to that game between them and Helix for the league title. So.
Well, both Granite Hills and Grossmont can take pride tonight and say they're going to have something to say about that.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Their awesome performances in that one. I just want to mention a few more details about Steele Canyon that kind of caught my eye. I thought the quote of the weekend was from Coach Longerbone. He said, "All of the dudes who are supposed to be dudes played really well." So that's just like Coach. All right. Hey, here's a good game, and I know you're going to have some great info on this one. And Adam Santana went out and scored 5 touchdowns in their first 11 plays of the game. Nathan Temple, 3 touchdown passes, and Santana's Randy Smith, 3 catches for 39 yards and 2 TDs. Jared Forster scored twice, and Santana really routed Mountain Empire. Even though Mountain Empire got on the board, they really didn't get it rolling until late. So nice win for Santana out at Mountain Empire.
Yeah, talked to Coach Estes after the game, after I left Steele Canyon, and following along and on social media, Santana was up 28 to nothing or something like that, whatever it was at half or whatever that score was. Temple only threw for 80 yards, 6 of 7 passing. So obviously threw three touchdown passes.
3 touchdown passes. Actually, he's only got 37 to go now to get to 40.
Yeah, right. It's one of his favorite targets. Randy Smith caught 3 balls for 39 yards and 2 of those touchdowns. And Jared Forster, the other skill guy, his other favorite receiver, he scored twice. Mutah had a decent night on the ground. And then, the backups came in and were able to do some stuff. And once they brought in the third and fourth stringers, by the time they brought them in, it was pretty much running clock. And Santana basically it was basically a tune-up for their showdown with the Q Dogs next week.
A game that they are definitely looking forward to.
Yes.
All right, let's continue to move on. We're going to stay in Santee. And the West Hills Wolfpack, they were in Santee and hosted the Southwest Eagles and got a very convincing victory, I would say, over the Southwest Eagles. Jake Mayhew rushed for 2 touchdowns. And interestingly, West Hills had a combined 8 for 12 passing for 170 yards. Cole Klingerman, 5 catches, 77 yards. Kip Klingerman caught the other touchdown pass, and Jake Mayhew also had a 64-yard reception in the game. So a good night overall for West Hills. They were expected to get a pretty easy victory, and so I think they did the job.
I don't know if it was going to be easy. Looking at some stuff on social media, seeing what the Wolfpack announcer guy on Facebook was saying, and talking to a couple other people who were at the game. Southwest El Centro, they were much bigger than West Hills. Height and weight wise, looking at their roster and everything, and just looking at during warm-ups and stuff. So and they were kind of talking smack. A couple people I know who were at the game, who happened to be on the down near the field, hearing them talk smack to West Hills and about West Hills. They really thought were going to have steamroll the Wolfpack, and obviously that didn't occur with West Hills. Basically, punching them in the face and drawing the knockout punch. And also I heard that Southwest El Centro kind of the players were kind of fighting amongst themselves. So I mean, we'll see. They obviously weren't expecting West Hills to do what they did.
One other player I'll mention is junior Brendan Green. He rushed for a touchdown in the game, and all of a sudden, got a nice little game next week that coming up when Valhalla is on West Hills. I think that's going to be very, very interesting. West Hills hosting the game from Valhalla, coming in from the bigger league, if you will, with their first win and definitely looking the part of a decent team. This one is going to be a very, very interesting game, especially considering, West Hills beat them last year and Valhalla's got all this momentum right now.
Yeah, obviously West Hills beat them last year, and then what was it? I think it was a couple years ago where it came down to the to that weird double pass play or whatever it was, in the last seconds of the game. Like you said, the momentum is kind of on both sides, and Valhalla's getting the little feel good story right now. I think it's going to be a very entertaining ball game out there. In Santee, on the west end out there at West Hills. So get there early, get your ticket, and I think it's gonna be a pretty good entertaining ball game.
Adam, a game that probably lived up to the hype, but maybe not the result that we wanted or expected. Patrick Henry, the 40-34 win over Mount Miguel, and kind of the same story for Mount Miguel. Again, they fall behind early, 18-0. They come all the way back and gain the lead, 20-18, in typical Mount Miguel fashion, with exciting plays and exciting comeback. But then Henry goes on their own touchdown run and takes a big lead again, only to see Mount Miguel with kind of a last-ditch effort, but not enough time left to get back in the game, and Henry ends up winning it 40-34. So a little bit of disappointment. I think Mount Miguel was expecting to win that game. The computers pointed that they would win that game, but hey, give credit to Henry and their quarterback, Matthew Elliott, 314 yards and 4 touchdowns. He kind of outdueled J.D. Laverdiere and the Matadors.
Is it Elliott or is it Castillo? What's the name?
Patrick Henry, quarterback. Who was it? Elliott?
No, I think it's Castillo.
Castillo. Okay, thank you.
I think it is. Yeah.
He had 314 yards.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers, but that sounds about right from what I heard.
Okay.
No, JT O'Sullivan, first year head coach out there for the Patriots. The Patriots haven't, they kind of been down on their luck the last few years. Another kind of like a couple of our teams out here in the East County, looking to bounce back and start a new tradition. I think Coach O'Sullivan got them on the right track, and like you said, you and I know, when I was talking to you, we thought Mount Miguel was going to win the game. But Laverdiere, I mean, he's got the arm, he's got the talent around him. Unfortunately, it sounds like defensively they just couldn't stop Henry.
Yeah, I'll go over those stats again for Castillo. 29 of 45 for 361 yards, 4 touchdowns. I will give this to Mount Miguel. They did have 3 interceptions in the game, and Castillo was throwing the ball all over the yard. One guy who did score a touchdown in the game for Henry was former Helix basketball player Kai Jesse. The junior caught a touchdown pass and actually looked very good at receiver in the game.
Yeah, they had that. Do you have the big tight end's name? The big 6'5" kid. He caught a pass down the middle for Henry. I know he torched Mount Miguel towards the end there, from what I saw in the highlights. Excuse me. Sorry, I don't have the name off the top.
They have Carrillo Batson. He had 10 receptions for 87 yards, and Kadeem Bakari, the senior, 5 catches, including 2 touchdown receptions.
Okay. But yeah, so, because our compadre, Chris Davis, was actually covering that game for the PPR. And, I didn't get to talk to him. So to get his thoughts, I know he wrote up a pretty good little recap, as you will, on it. I expected Mount Miguel to do a little bit better against Patrick Henry, considering what we saw of Henry last year. I know when they came out here to play El Cap blew him out of the water. Not saying that 1 year means anything to the next, but obviously it sounds like Coach O'Sullivan has got the Patriots going the right way as of right now, anyways.
Yeah, a couple of notes in that game for Mount Miguel. Jacob Laverdiere connected with Jaheim Allen Pompey for a 40-yarder, and he also connected with Kojo Miller for a 30-yard game, but the Matadors ended up fumbling at the 2-yard line, and that was in the first half. So touchdown receptions, Laverdiere hit Castillo for 14 yards. That closed the gap to 18-13, and the reception from Laverdiere to Allen Pompey from 15 yards made it 20-18. That's when Mount Miguel took the lead. Interestingly, Miller, let's see, they intercepted Castillo late and had a 50-yard interception return. And he ended up catching a touchdown pass, just going over some of the notes that you had mentioned from Chris. And Laverdiere scored on a 3-yard sneak, but by that time they were already 3 scores down once again. They did close the gap, obviously, to within 1 touchdown, but that was as close as they could get. So hopefully the Matadors will pick it up. Okay, a tough game right here. Number 4 Lincoln against Monte Vista. And, hey, through the first part of the game, this game was scoreless.
Yeah, I know. I was shocked. Definitely shocked.
In there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was one of those games, to lose, like you and I talked about, to lose a caliber player of, of Jamon McClendon, who was basically your heart and soul pretty much the last, 3-4 years. It's tough to replace a guy like that. And you know what? They hung in there with the Hornets for a little while, and then unfortunately the Hornets just were too much firepower, too much athleticism from the Hornets there in that second half.
2 quarterbacks combined for over 340 yards for Lincoln. They had 361 yards passing total. They only rushed for 62 yards. So a big night for the Lincoln passing game. Cajon Smith, 8 receptions and 2 touchdowns. So Lincoln gets the convincing victory there. Isaiah Gardner did score the touchdown for Monte Vista. At the time, I think it made the score 13-7. Monte Vista was right in the game, but even Coach Yamamoto said eventually it was just too much Lincoln in that one.
Yeah, Lincoln, they're one of the top teams in the count in San Diego. The fact that Monte Vista, like we said, they played with them for as long as they did. As you know, 12-7 at half. Then they exploded. It looks like we got Raymond Brown chiming in here. With 26 points in that third quarter. Definitely, like Raymond Brown says, it was a great effort by Monte Vista. So it was one of those deals where Lincoln's athleticism, unfortunately, came back to bite the Monarchs. Again, numbers game. Lincoln could throw out those guys. 2 quarterbacks can't compete with that. Especially with Monte Vista. Monte Vista, the way that they offensively, they don't pass the ball. They're not built to come back. So it's just one of those deals that I think the wear and tear finally got to the Monarchs.
Just a couple more games to go. We're going to try to keep this under an hour. You can see the timer there in the corner. Our viewers can't, but you and I can. So if we had the biggest maybe disappointment of the weekend, maybe it's the Christian Patriots. We think them going to beat their rival. Right now, whoever's the road team in this series is winning the games, and Santa Fe Christian came in, and they were the ones doing the punching in the mouth, if you will. Santa Fe Christian does a very nice job, comes in and beats the Christian Patriots, spoiling the debut of Gabe Krug as quarterback of the Patriots.
Yeah, I didn't really see much of this game. I know that Christian I think they had an opportunity there in the end. Unfortunately, time ran out on them. Santa Fe Christian, they seem to always play Christian tough, and even get the best of them. Like you said, the road team has won every game in the last few years. It sounds like. It seemed like it was a good crowd. I saw the highlights. Excuse me, and like you said, Krug, the transfer quarterback. Unfortunately, his debut was spoiled. But you know what? I think Christian will bounce back like they normally do. Coach Oliver and Coach Beezer will get the troops rolling there. They're young, so they'll do what they do and come back and compete for a playoff spot later on down the road.
Now, Gabe Krug did rush for a touchdown that made it 13-7 at the time, with under 7 minutes to go in the second quarter. And then Nate Stein had a touchdown rushing from 2 yards out that closed them to within 20-14 in the third quarter. And then Christian Salacup, who really might be one of the guys that we're going to see, I think, on special teams more than just this one time, but he had a 99-yard kickoff return that brought it to within 28-20 following an SFC touchdown, and I think Salacup will return to the end zone again this season, probably more than once on a return. He is already shown to be an exceptional return man, and he did it against Santa Fe Christian. So we've seen Christian pick up the pieces before, but they're going to have to do so right away and get that turned around.
Yeah, most definitely. But Oliver and Beezer, they're no slouches, as you know. They've been around the block quite a bit. There's no Jeremiah. There's no Jeremiah coming through that door. You know what I mean? No, I think Krug, once he figures things out, I think he'll do okay for them. I think they'll be fine. They get Nathan Stein. I think he'll have a season, and they'll get the run game going defensively. Probably a numbers thing, a numbers deal again. So I think they'll be fine.
And one other team that didn't live up to our expectations, but I hope that they'll get things turned around, will be the El Capitan Vaqueros. They went out and took on their sectional rival, if you will, Modern Day Catholic. They played some tough games in the past, but Modern Day Catholic really did a number on El Capitan this Friday. What happened there?
Yeah, that game, like the Monte Vista game, it was scoreless at halftime. El Cap actually had an opportunity to score just before half. They had the ball, I believe, on the 3 or 4 yard line, 1st and goal. Couldn't punch it in. They ran the ball multiple times in a row and got stuffed. And they unfortunately couldn't capitalize on that, and went into the locker room tied at 0-0. And unfortunately, Modern Day, made the adjustments in the starting that second half. And Appleman, I believe the kid's name is, he once he threw that long 57-yard touchdown pass, then it was on for the Crusaders. For El Cap, Donnie Green had a great game. He rushed for, I believe, 100 yards. Wickhauser, unfortunately, just couldn't get it going. But you know what? It is what it is. That's why Burner, as you know, Moni, we've known Burner a long time. When have the Vaqueros ever ducked anybody? So, I mean, it's just one of those things, they play teams like Modern Day to get an idea of where they stack up. And I think it did his kids well. Unfortunately, obviously, like we said, it wasn't the results they were expecting. But you know what? They played all right, I thought. Other than that third quarter, they played okay.
Well, thank you for such a great recap of these East County games. We'll try to get together each week and just talk about the results, the final stats, if you will, from a head statistician, career statistician, the man, Adam Paul. Adam, thanks so much. Tell us where we can find you, EC Preps on Twitter, and your appearances on 97.3 The Fan.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be a regular thing. I mean, so we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Brady and I, we talk and everything, so we'll see. But no, you can check. Just do a Twitter search of EC Preps on Twitter, ecpreps.com. You and I will hang out, and everybody can catch us at a ball game.
That they can, or just hit us up on Twitter. Our
Absolutely.
DMs are open. All right.
Or what?
Our DMs are open, whatever that means.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever that means. All right, we kept it under an hour. Adam Paul, thanks a lot from EC Preps for joining us. And for EastCountySports.com, I'm Ramon Scott, and good night.
Thanks, Monte.